Hey, and welcome to the Deep Resilience podcast. I'm your host, Melli O'Brien, and in this podcast, along with my weekly newsletter and the Deep Resilience program, we are focusing on one clear goal: translating the best evidence-based tools and the deep wisdom teachings on mental resilience into practical everyday strategies that are accessible to everyone. It is my deep passion to bring you content that breaks down big concepts in ways that make sense to you, but also to make sure I give you tools in each episode that you can immediately use to grow your inner strength and create real positive change in your life and in the world. And hey, if you want to take your inner strength to the next level, be sure to join my newsletter at melliobrien.com, where you'll receive a whole range of extra benefits, special offers, and bonuses. Let's dive in now to today's episode. Hey friend, welcome to the podcast, or welcome back if you're a regular here. Today I am going to speak about something a little personal to me, something that I wish I had have known years ago when I was in the thick of depression myself. So depression is complex. I just want to say before we kind of dive into this episode, it can have its root causes in many different things: genetics, lifestyle, trauma, brain chemistry, and many, many more things. But one of the most powerful and often overlooked contributors is the way we think. The patterns of thought that are quietly shaping how we see ourselves, how we see life, other people, relationships, and our future. Now, here's the really tough part. When you are depressed, these mental patterns, they aren't obvious to us. They feel like the truth. And they run in the background like mental software that's shaping your entire experience of life, but they're distorting your experience of life. But they can be subtle and they can be convincing. And even though they're having such a huge effect on our life, our mood, the quality of our relationships, and our ability to, actualize our potential in the world, we just don't realize what's happening. So today what I'm going to share with you is I want to help, first of all, shine a light on 5 of the most common thought patterns that feed and sustain depression. I'm going to help you clearly identify whether they're running in your own life. And most importantly, I'm going to guide you through a kind of like a foundational tool that can help you begin to break free. This episode is not a substitute for therapy. It's certainly not medical advice, but it is the exact foundation that I used to transform my own depression many years ago. And it's the foundational tools that I use when I work with people now. And I really do believe from the depths of my heart and my own experience of, my own personal transformation and witnessing the transformation of many, many people over the last 20 years as a mental health coach and educator, that for most people who are struggling with depression, this inner work is not just helpful on the journey of recovery, it's essential. So let's dive into it. I'm going to walk you through the 5 most common patterns that feed depression. So the first one is what we call all or nothing thinking. It's otherwise known sometimes as black and white thinking. And it's incredibly common, actually, in people with anxiety and depression. We all do black and white thinking sometimes, but some of us more than others. This is the tendency to see the world in extremes. You're either a total success or a complete failure. Something is perfect or it's ruined. A person is really, really awesome and they're all good, or they're totally bad. Now, again, while many of us fall into this kind of thinking occasionally, when it becomes a habit, it will quietly start dismantling and disrupting many areas of our lives, including the way we feel. Here's what black and white thinking might sound like inside your head. Let's say you're trying at something and you make a mistake, right? I've failed. If you don't get it exactly right, you failed. You're a total failure. Let's say that someone didn't text you back. This person doesn't even care about me. They're just selfish. I didn't stick to my diet today, okay? Then the mind goes, okay, you're a total failure. I might as well give up. Now, these thoughts might sound kind of harmless in the moment. Maybe they're even motivating because it feels like the inner critic is trying to whip you into shape. But actually, over time, they create a kind of rigid mental framework that becomes really, really damaging. Let's look at a few areas of life this can impact. So, first of all, your health and mood. Living in extremes like that is actually really exhausting. And the truth is that life mostly happens in the middle. Like, life is messy, it's nuanced, it's in progress. So when our minds only register perfection or disaster, it creates a constant sense of inadequacy, failure, kind of inner drama, and hopelessness. We don't allow ourselves and, quite frankly, other people a lot of the time to just be human. And that chronic sense of falling short, in ourselves can really feed depression. Now, in our relationships, black and white thinking can be pretty devastating. So you might find yourself suddenly flipping from someone, thinking someone is basically a good person, and then something small happens and you immediately flip them into the bad person category when they disappoint you, say. And you might really struggle to repair that conflict because your mind makes it all or nothing. If they cared, they wouldn't have done that to you, right? So you might just break off relationships, quit jobs, ghost people, rather than actually just working through the complexity of the situation. When we idealize or devalue other people in cycles, our relationships often become pretty volatile and unstable. And being on either side of that dynamic is pretty painful. Now, in the workplace, this mindset can be pretty harsh too. It's like, if I don't absolutely crush this presentation and have a standing ovation, I'm a fraud. If I don't get that job, I'll never succeed. If I'm not good at this, I should probably just quit, right? So it can create a lot of rigidity in our roles. It can create like turf wars. That's not my job. I'm not qualified for that. There's a kind of rigidity around this kind of thinking. But especially in today's world where we need to collaborate, we need adaptability, flexibility, and creativity. That kind of rigid thinking can really hold you back and stop you from being able to cooperate in a team in a way that would really help you to thrive in your career. Research has shown that when we're able to embrace ambiguity, nuance, and kind of like the middle ground in life, we become more innovative and resilient. Black and white thinking is also strongly linked to disordered eating. This was definitely the case in my life. So when food becomes labeled as there's only supposed to have this stuff and the other stuff is bad, and you're only supposed to look a certain way and the other way is bad, your self-worth really rides on that rigidity and creates really unsustainable cycles in our life. So we're going to talk about shifting these patterns once we've gone through them. But for now, one of the first things to know about shifting any pattern is recognizing it. So the red flag words that often show up in this kind of thinking are words like always, never, impossible, ruined, disaster, perfect, hopeless. So when you catch these phrases, the first step is to breathe and just name what's happening. Name what's happening. Okay, I think this is an unhelpful thinking pattern. Okay, so we're going to come back to this at the end, and I'll take you through a 3-step process to start to change these patterns. But the first step is to catch it. Overgeneralization, the second pattern we are looking at. So overgeneralization is when you might say something like, let's say you screwed something up, and then you'll say, I can never do anything right. Maybe you failed an exam. I'll never be smart enough. You wanted someone to support you. I always have to do everything alone. No one ever helps me. Okay, so here's some red flag words for this one. Always, never, nobody, everybody, those kinds of things. So overgeneralization is when you maybe take one negative event or a handful of them and you draw a sweeping conclusion. You use a very small piece of data to paint a much broader and more fixed and permanent picture about your life, other people, or the world. Okay, so it's a pattern really rooted in pain. It's usually an attempt by your mind to try to find certainty in the chaos of a difficult experience. Problem is, when we do this, we write a kind of internal law, like this is the way it is, this is who I am, this is how life works. And the reason this is so tricky, this is so potentially painful for us and debilitating and disempowering, is because that internal law, once you create that kind of a belief, it tends to become a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy. So let's say you applied for a job, you didn't get it. An overgeneralizing mind might turn that into, I'm never going to get a job. I'm unemployable. But the truth is that was actually just one rejection. And even one rejection or 10 doesn't determine your future. Each application is its own situation with its own context and outcome. But this way of thinking, overgeneralization, kind of collapses these situations into one fixed story. Here's another example. Let's just say you tried opening up to a friend about your feelings and they respond in a way that feels a bit awkward or maybe even dismissive. Overgeneralization might sound like, I can't trust anyone. No one understands me. People don't care about me really. So that one single painful experience then becomes a template for your whole relational worldview. And so instead of reaching out again, you shut down, you stop trying, and the depression deepens. Right? So overgeneralization can become a real downward spiral that affects self-esteem, relationships, your willingness to take healthy risks. It can really keep you stuck in the past, reliving them as if they're happening again and again. It's really self-reinforcing because the more you say, I always fail, people always let you down. If you say, I always fail, you're going to be less likely to try again. The less you try, the fewer chances you have for success. And the cycle loops, right? So overgeneralization can really flatten your world into a story of doom and disempowerment. The more you believe it, the more your brain filters reality to match it. That's why this pattern is so harmful and keeps reinforcing itself in a downward spiral. So the third pattern, I'll just do a light touch on this one. It's a little bit lesser known. It's called self-discrepancy. The research around it is really compelling, really powerful. So self-discrepancy refers to the gap between who you are now and how your life is now and who you think you should be, like your ideal self or your ideal life. When you constantly compare your real life right now to a vision of who you think you should be, more successful, more attractive, more put together, then you basically create a painful mental gap where you always feel like you're not enough. You always feel like you're failing, even when you're actually doing just fine. Self-discrepancy often shows up as a kind of hyper-perfectionism and a hyper-discipline in life. It often sounds like you might be having thoughts like, I'm not the person I really wanted to be. I should be able to handle this better. I should be further along. But a lot of the time, it just takes the form of wishing and wanting for your life and yourself to be something more. Now, studies have shown that even when people are visualizing really positive things that they want, they are priming themselves to notice the gap between their actual self and their ideal self. And when they do that, their mood significantly drops. So that's how strong this pattern is. It really tends to hijack joy and contentment and replace it with shame or feelings of inadequacy. I think this is one of the main reasons that social media is having such a huge impact on so many people in not positive ways, and why the research is showing more and more that social media is correlated with, the heavier your social media use, the more there's a correlation between anxiety and depression. I used to be stuck in this one a lot, my friends. I had a long internal checklist of what I thought a worthy person looked like. It was such a huge gap that I created between who I was and who I thought I should be. And that was definitely, for me, this was the primary pattern for me that spiraled me into a very deep depression and eating disorder. I never felt like I could measure up to my vision of what I thought I should be. And so what helped me the most was just seeing this. Seeing this is how the human mind works. It does this thing. Whenever it does this thing, it's incredibly painful, and I have a choice to unhook from doing this thing. It also helped me to recognize that the ideal standards that are being promoted by media also are not the truth. They are often impossible, actually, standards. They are inherited from a culture, especially in the West, that benefits from our consumer culture, from us keeping on feeling a little bit unworthy and then trying to do things to close that gap. But they're also just not good for me. So I can also choose wisely how I want to interact with those kinds of platforms as an act of care for myself. So I'm going to have to do a whole other episode on just that. The fourth pattern is rumination, and rumination is when you dwell on a situation or a problem without any actual intention to constructively solve it in that moment. So in other words, you're just thinking over and over and over again about something in a loop, right? So that loop just keeps playing over and over and over in your head. Like, why did I say that? What if I never get better? What's wrong with me? Or you just keep on fixating about a particular problem over and over and over and over again. And rumination can trick us because it feels like problem solving, but it's not. It's actually problem creating because it keeps you locked in your thoughts and cut off from the present moment. What's especially tricky is that rumination can kind of masquerade as being reflective or analytical, but instead of leading to insight or constructive problem solving or making actual plans to do something in that moment, it just makes you feel worse. It makes you feel more disempowered, more stuck, more frantic, more stressed. The key sign that you are ruminating is the thoughts aren't actually leading you anywhere new. Like, they're not moving you towards an actual action step in that moment, or some kind of empowered action, or towards having an important conversation or something like that. You're actually just circling the drain, right? And you can always check in with how it's making you feel. Because constructive problem solving, when you sit down deliberately, you're present, you're focused, and you're making an action plan, feels very, very different. It doesn't tend to ramp up stress. It tends to make you feel more calm, focused, and present. Okay, and finally, the last one is called emotional reasoning. This one is subtle, but powerful. Emotional reasoning is when you believe something that must be true because it feels true. The emotion becomes the evidence. So instead of questioning our thoughts, we just accept them as fact because they come with strong feelings. So here's what emotional reasoning might sound like. Like, I feel anxious, so there must be something wrong. I feel worthless, so I must be worthless. I must be just not any good to anyone else. I feel like no one cares about me, so clearly no one does. So the trouble with this is our emotions are not always reliable indicators of reality, especially during depression, my friends. When we get stuck in this loop, it's kind of like seeing life through a foggy lens. Everything feels more hopeless, more dangerous, and more personal than it really is. So I'll give you a few real life examples here as well. So let's just say you're feeling a bit lonely and you might immediately think, oh, no one cares about me. But actually, you've just been a bit isolated lately and you haven't reached out to anyone. Right? So that might be the evidence that you could consider. Now, you might feel angry at someone and conclude they must have done something wrong. But you can't, if you examine it a little more closely, you can't actually point to anything concrete that they did, and no one else seems upset with them. So you might feel like a failure and assume I am a failure. I'm a loser, even though your past evidence shows success and growth. So this pattern can be pretty sneaky when we're feeling bad, especially because it feels so real. And we rarely pause to ask, wait a second, is this feeling indicating any kind of fact? Like, to do a simple check-in, let's just say I feel like no one likes me. And you can ask yourself, is that a feeling or is that actually a fact? And I want to say, feelings are valid. They matter, but they don't always reflect the truth. So it's worth checking because feelings can have many different causes and they're a bit like the weather. They pass through, but they don't define the landscape. So emotional reasoning often shows up with phrases like, I feel like it's true. I can't explain, I just know it's true. That's your cue to pause. And as we're going to talk about next in the practice I'm going to take you through, creating a little space between feelings and belief is a really, really powerful first step. We're not going to try to get rid of feelings. We're just questioning the story that comes with it. And the more you practice this, the more freedom and clarity you're going to start to find. Right, okay, so now we've uncovered these 5 patterns. Let's talk about what we can do when they arise. And as I've mentioned during this episode, one of the most accessible and effective first steps that you can do is just catch it, right? Just going to catch what's happening in the moment, building that self-awareness. But on top of that, we've got 2 other simple steps we can take. So this practice I'm going to share with you is catch it, check it, and change it. This is actually a 3-step process for reframing a thought. This comes from the principles of CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, and it's something that I've used to help transform my own mental health pretty profoundly, and it's a fundamental skill that I teach people as well. And I see it get amazing results in many people's lives. So this is a foundational practice. There are many other ways we can address these thought patterns, but this is a great foundation, a great starting point. It's not, in my view, it's not the whole approach that I take with people or myself these days, but it is the foundational place to start. So let's go through the steps. Catch it. Start by just noticing the thought. Like, try to become aware of these patterns and be willing to examine when you suddenly feel a bit anxious, sad, or hopeless. Check in with what you're believing right now. You can even pause and ask yourself that question. What am I thinking right now? What am I believing right now? A second step is to check it. You can ask yourself in this step, hang on, let's gently challenge these thoughts. Is this thought actually true? What evidence do I have for it? Are there other ways to look at this situation? Would I say this to somebody I love? So we're just gently challenging our thoughts here. Really powerful thing to do. This step is powerful because it's where you start to find the ability to poke holes in the story that's feeding your depression and step back and get some mental, emotional space. This is otherwise known as kind of unhooking or cognitive defusion. Now those thoughts can no longer pull you around and drag you down and pull you into limitation so much. Third step, change it. This is where you're going to shift that thought pattern to something more compassionate, more realistic, more empowering. And one thing I know from my own experience and working with people, I just really want to acknowledge this, that when you've been thinking the same kinds of thoughts for a really long time, there can be this strange pull, like you don't actually want to change them. It can be this weird moment of resistance. So what I like to tell people to do is I want you to imagine, kind of think about having inner archetypes, like there's a villain or a victim that often those voices in the head, like a really harsh inner critic, or you can feel really victimized and disempowered, like those are part of every human. But so is our ability to step into an inner archetype of like a wise, strong coach, a strong leader, a wise elder, right? So step into an energy of someone who's caring, supportive, and really strong, and shift the story. Yeah. So if you say have a thought, I'm a failure, you might check that thought and just go, hang on a second, is that really true? Like that's not a very helpful thought. And then in the change it step, you might just say something to yourself like, you know what, I did make a mistake today, but that doesn't define me. Or, if you think to yourself something like, I'm a loser or something like that, you could say to yourself, I am struggling right now. That's true. But you know what? I'm doing my best. I'm healing. I'm doing the work. So you get the idea. Just try to step into a different energy. You might even like to change your body language a little bit in this change it step. Like, just take your chin up a little bit, like 0.5 centimeter. Bring your chest forward just a little bit, like 0.5 centimeter, barely perceptible to anyone who's watching. And change the story to something that feels more compassionate, more supportive, more empowering. Here's the thing, right? I really want to stress this. Your first few attempts at this might feel really awkward. You might not believe the new thought, and that is okay. The old thought might have had years of rehearsal time. The new one's just starting out. It's normal for that to feel a bit strange. This is a skill. Mental strength is a skill. Happiness is a skill. And with gentle, consistent practice, really big changes are possible. So I really encourage you, if this episode speaks to you, take these tools and give them a practice in your life. Again, catch it, check it, change it. Catch it, you're checking in. What am I really believing right now? Okay, check it. Is this thought actually true? Do I have any evidence for this? Well, what's another way to look at this that's more empowering? And then change it. Step into that energy of that leader, that caring, supportive coach, and change the story to something more useful, helpful, and empowering. One final note, I know how hard it is to feel stuck in these thought patterns. For many years, these thought patterns were my normal. I could not even imagine that there was a different way of thinking or living or being. I felt like this was a permanent state for me. It was my mental, emotional home. But I want to really assure you, I was in such a dark hole that I really feel like if I can practice these skills and make a pretty significant change, anyone can. So one step at a time, one practice at a time, I just began to shift them, and things did change in a pretty profound way. So if you see yourself in any of these 5 patterns today, please don't judge yourself. Celebrate the fact that you are becoming aware of them, because awareness is the beginning of freedom. If you're going through a period of depression, you're not alone and you're not stuck. These are steps you can take to support yourself, to find balance, resilience, and some more inner freedom starting today. You are not your thoughts. You are the awareness behind them, and you can learn to lead your mind somewhere new, somewhere more empowering, somewhere more beneficial. And hey, it's also wonderful. I really want to congratulate you for listening to this end of this episode, because you're doing something to get support for yourself. So congratulations. This is really smart. It's a really wonderful act of care towards yourself, and I really hope it's been helpful. There's so many other great tools out there to support you as well, like therapy, coaching, courses. So just keep at it. You're doing great. Give these tools a try. Catch it, check it, change it. And thanks for being here. Thank you for your practice, for your courage. Until the next episode of the podcast, take care of yourself and remember to be kind to yourself. If you forget everything else, just remember that one thing. Okay, all the best. Take care. Stay strong. If you know someone who you think might benefit from listening to this episode, share it with them. Sharing it could really help them to feel better and improve the quality of their life. And if you found this episode helpful, remember to subscribe to this podcast so that you can receive more tips on growing your inner strength and keep practicing along with us every week. And if you'd like some more support in becoming mentally, emotionally, and spiritually stronger, come check out the offerings I have to support you on my website at www.melliobrien.com. As well as coaching and course options, I also have a bunch of free resources for you, including a free Deep Resilience Care Package, which you can begin to use right away to get some immediate relief from stress and suffering, improve your resilience and mental well-being, and help you navigate whatever you're going through with more wisdom, skill, and confidence. You can find the links for all of that in the show notes. Thanks again for tuning in. Take care and stay strong.